My name is Connor Boyack. I am the precinct chair of Lehigh 23. This is going to be fun. We've got the leadership of the Leg District 6 here helping as well. Both of the campaigns that are seeking nomination through the caucus convention process. We also have Mike Brenny here, who's on the ballot as well for the primary, so it'll be a fun night. Very quick layout of how this is going to go. We'll do some introductions. Each candidate will introduce themselves, and we're starting with John. We'll get into some substantive questions that we'll spend a little bit more time on. We'll then do some rapid fire questions. It'll be pretty quick. And then we'll end with some 1-minute questions to finish off. Leah is going to pass around cards. Many of you have emailed or posted with questions. If you want to submit any final questions, you can, hold on to these for 15 minutes, take some time towards the beginning, and then in the middle, when we get into those rapid fire questions, I'll let you know that now is the time to pass them in. So if you think of any questions, Leah will pass out some cards right now. Raise your hand if you want to snag one and hang on to it and potentially submit another question. You're welcome. Chairs, good question. Steal some from the candidates if you want. And there's some in here, so come pack in. We've got plenty here in the middle, some up front. Find a seat. Feel free to applaud the opening statements, and then when we get into the policy questions, if you would please hold your applause, otherwise it gets awkward and competitive. Let's just hold all of our applause until the very end. That'll save more time as well. Excuse me. With that, we'll begin with John for 3 minutes.
Well, thanks everybody else for coming out on the debate. We kind of just tried to figure out what format we were going to do this. We thought a trial by combat, but there was a clear disadvantage going on. And then we thought dance off, and the disadvantage was the other way, so we decided to go debate. This is a great opportunity for you guys, for me to meet everybody, and I hope you guys love it the same way that I do. I love being out here, I love talking to people, and I hope that we really are able to get into the questions and show you who we are. Who I am, and I grew up in Southern California. I grew up in a large family of 8 kids. My father's in the back walking around somewhere. If you want to ask questions about how bad I was, he's the person to ask. But I did grow up being taught about the principles of the Constitution, the principles of our founding fathers, the principles of the freedoms that have really set apart this country as something different. And of Utah being a basis for that history and a basis for that organization that we take pride in as who we are. Because what we are is we love freedom. We love independence. At least we say we do. And in this state, we say we love independence and we're striving towards business, and yet many of our practices don't follow that same thing. Many of our practices work to have regulatory environments that are not conducive to business. Regulatory environments that create monopolies for certain organizations. Regulatory environments that make it more difficult to enter into business. It is up to us, and this is the reason I'm running, to find ways to cut back those chains of government, to cut back the ways that we enter into business so that we have more innovation, so we have cheaper products at the end that are produced locally instead of away. Utah in 2013 came out of a survey and was marked 11th most regulated state in all of the United States. My job right now that I do is I work in regulatory affairs. My job is to read regulations, and that's what I do all day. And then I collect paperwork, and I tell the company, okay, this is the amount extra you're gonna have to spend, or this is how I have to add more stuff to my job, or these are more requirements that I'm gonna have now, and it's gonna require more money. I can't work on these other projects. You need to hire somebody else to take advantage and do these other things. And it costs the company money, which ends up costing me money. That's the view of everything I have on when I'm gonna be looking at law, crafting law, repealing law. Does it fit underneath the Constitution, both the Utah and the United States Constitution? Does it fit underneath the proper regulatory environment? And is it something that we will be able to expand business, expand our rights? If it doesn't fit under there, then we should not pass it as law, and we should not be dealing with it. There's a couple of issues I'm sure we'll talk about tonight, and I'll close up with some of those other ones. But the important thing is we recognize we are in a time where we can change these things, where you all recognize that, and I am the person I believe that will be the best to correct that for you. Thank you.
Corey, 3 minutes.
My fellow delegates, it's really wonderful to be in your midst this evening. I've been a delegate for many years now, and I've been representing the district as the chair for the Utah County Republican Party for the past 5 years. So I know what you're going through at this point. There's a lot of decisions to be made in the next few days. I want you to know that I know what you're going through, I feel the pain, and you're getting a lot of stuff every day. I'm very excited to be a candidate for Utah House District 6. We have a lot of issues to face, and one of the main issues that we have is the fast growth of the state. There's no group of people that understands the pain and prosperity of growth like this group right here. The people who live in Lehigh and Saratoga Springs, we understand what fast growth is, and we're going to experience that throughout the entire state. The fast growth is going to be an issue. Every issue we face is going to be magnified by that one issue. So we're going to need to look, in fact, the projections are that we are going to be double the size that we are today. So we have about 3 million people in the state. And so in the next 25 to 35 years, we're going to have about 6 million. So when you start thinking about our natural resources, our land and our water, the land is going to be very, very important. We need to get the land back from the federal government and back into the state. The state can manage the land better. It will make it better for us as citizens. We can be better stewards, and it's going to be the best thing for us. So I'm going to do everything I can to fight for the lands coming back into the hands of Utah. Water, we're already straining our water resource. It's only going to get worse as we grow in our population. So we're going to have to look at how we're going to get more water here. We're going to have to look at how we price water. We're going to have to learn we're going to have to work at conserving water as a citizenship. Education, big issue. We're going to have to build a lot more schools. And more importantly than that, we need to get schools. We need to really work hard to truly get the school programs back in our local communities, where parents and teachers and school and professional educators are the ones making the decision. And more importantly than that, we need to get the federal government out of our schools. They do not do a good job, and so it's important that we do that. We need to remember that as our population increases, it's very important that our dependence on the federal government does not go up with it. My hope is that as Utah grows, that we will grow into our sovereignty. That is the vision that our founding fathers had for the individual states, and that is the vision I will take to the Utah Capitol with an eye on the future. So thank you. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your service very much.
So lacking a sound system, I think I'll talk sideways so you all can hear as well. The first set of questions will be 2.5 minutes long. These are going to be some substantive policy questions. And then the candidate who responds last can have 30 seconds if they choose to rebut or respond to the person before if they'd like to. So we're going to alternate who goes first each time. So this time we'll start with Corey. And the first question is, elected officials often claim that Utah's government is limited and that taxes and regulations are low. Do you agree or disagree, and why? Start with Corey, 2.5 minutes.
I disagree because we have taxes. So there's always going to be too many taxes. I think we do a pretty good job as a state. We can always do better. And one of the things that we need to remember that as the state grows, our tax base will increase. So there's going to be a natural growth in our tax base. So one of the things we need to remember is that as our tax base grows, what are we going to do as a legislature with the funds? So when we look at things like education, transportation, one of the things that happened in this past legislature is Senator Adams sponsored a bill that took money from the transportation bill and put it to the water projects. I don't have a real issue with that, except what about the money that's in the transportation fund? So we have to be very careful with how we use the money, because we have a lot of things that we're going to have to use our revenue as a state to take care of as we grow as a state. So the impact on our revenues coming in from taxes and other sources is that we are going to need to manage it very, very well. I am not a tax guy. I'm not going to be going up there looking to increase taxes or to put new taxes in place. And so that's my response.
All right, John, 2.5 minutes.
Well, I think I answered this question pretty well at the beginning, was do I feel like we're a limited government without regulation? I deal with regulations. I've dealt with it on state level, federal level, and international level. We're not a free state regarding it. I give you a really good example. Anybody heard of the company Tesla? Yeah. Who's gone and test drove in a car here in Utah? You can't. It's against the law. David Kirkham builds fantastic cars, $500,000 cars. Can't sell it in the state of Utah. Sorry. We have a program. I mean, I'm just going on the same theme here, but BYU has a program in their mechanical engineer degree where they design specialized cars and they have competitions. We lose those jobs almost immediately. You can't build a car, sell it here in Utah. Why would they hire anybody here in Utah? We've got lots of other stuff. I was talking to somebody today who is trying to start their own business. They're doing solar. And they said, before I even start, beginning every month, in order to be able to operate and do anything, I have to pay $1,000 to be able to qualify for all the regulations. And then he gets to spend more money trying to make more money. And what do we do with all of those taxes? Well, that's the question is, we talked about the transportation, and Corey made a good point. We're taking money and putting it other ways and trying to do it, and we're not putting it where it should go. The transportation board decided that the estimates by Eagle Mountain and Lehigh were false, and we pretty much, Traverse Mountain and Thanksgiving Point, have really messed them up. And by doing so, we've messed ourselves up. I was talking with the former mayor of Eagle Mountain about the Mountain View corridor, begging to have that because it will really help Lehigh, but it will also help Salt Lake County. It will help all of them because we'll get a lot of the transportation off the 15. Do we have a limited government? We say we do. Yet we allow hundreds of millions of dollars to come in from the federal government into our education and say, oh, we're okay with you telling us what we do with our education. That's not a limited government. We have 66% of this state is owned by federal control. That means we're only 33% free. For me, that doesn't say limited government. And so in all honesty, we've gotten so far away from our founding fathers, we've forgotten. Like Ronald Reagan said when he was running for office, and at BYU, he said, "You don't know what freedom is," and that was in 1976.
All right, the next question, we'll start with John, 2.5 minutes as well. The question is, how should the Utah Legislature plan for population growth, which is expected to increase in our state dramatically in the next few decades? 2.5 minutes.
First thing that the legislature should do is we should actually listen to the cities. We have some city council people here. I've talked to several of them, as I said before, and they put in estimates and they say we're going to have this much business going in, and we're going to need these kind of roads, and because of how the bid's going in, we need this much growth and other stuff. And they tried to say that several years ago, and again they didn't believe them, and they put the money somewhere else. So that's the first thing, is we need to make sure we actually listen to the people who are dealing with it. We're dealing with the problem with Adobe. There's supposed to be 3 buildings there, and they can only put 1 because of the transportation. They're saying, sorry, we said you could have 3, but you can only have 1. The other thing is we're definitely going to have to deal with water. Water is going to be an absolute essential issue for us. We need to figure out and start planning now on retention for that water. We want to be able to grow things. There's a lot of areas here in Utah that grow really nice crops, and we like eating. I like eating. Everybody else likes eating. We need to make sure that we can continue to grow that. We like drinking water. We like having baths. Everybody knows water is an important issue for that. So we need to plan for that. And the transportation is essential. But if we're not listening to the cities, and we're not listening to the counties of the legislature, and we're giving in to interests that are coming in from UDOT and MAP and other things, we're not going to get it right. And the legislature needs to listen to the counties and cities because they've really got the pulse on what it is, and put as much control for them as possible. Anyway, that's my answer.
Okay, Corey?
I think the first thing we have to do as a legislature is we have to look at it holistically. Every single issue we face in the next few decades is going to have a direct impact on the success of us growing in a way that people can enjoy their happiness. Isn't it the pursuit of happiness where we want to go? Isn't that the ideal situation where we create an environment where people can pursue happiness? We don't guarantee happiness, but we can create an environment where we allow our citizens to pursue our inalienable right of happiness. And so we have to look at it holistically. So we are definitely going to have to look at different ways to address growth. And part of it's going to be, the biggest part of it is that we have to plan. So one of the things we have to do is we have to better prioritize. So let's take the freeways, for example. We have to be able to prioritize better where those projects begin, how they are funded, and where they go. And people are all across the state are going to have roads and freeways needs. So we're, as a legislature, we have to better prioritize it. It makes me crazy. I think it makes everyone here crazy that we have this great new freeway. It goes all the way through Utah County, goes up and over the point of the mountain, and right here, the fastest growing area in the state, and one of the fastest growing areas in the country. And we have this gauntlet. We have this 3-mile gauntlet where all these cars go in. And so, yes, it's going to have an economic impact. It already is. Some of these businesses over here that are going in, they're already trying to figure out how are we going to get people in and out. Businesses that want to come here, and they want to come here. Lehigh and this area is the new Silicon Valley. You can call it Silicon Slopes. I like to call it the sodium chloride valley. But it's a big issue, and it's having an economic impact as well as affecting our livelihood. So we're going to have to look at that in every way possible. And one of the great things is we're talking a lot about getting the lands, our public lands, out of the federal government and then back into Utah. The benefits of that will be staggering in helping us to handle all of these areas as it relates to growth over the next few decades.
All right, Corey, next question. We'll start with you. The question is, one or both of you will advance to a primary election where Mike Brenny is also seeking the Republican nomination for this position and qualified by collecting signatures under Senate Bill 54, which provides for an alternative route to the ballot. What is your position on this new law? Corey, 2.5 minutes.
No offense to Mr. Brenny, but I don't like the law at all. It is the law, and as people who have the principle of being law-abiding citizens, we have to live by that, but I don't like the law. I believe that the caucus system, the convention system that we have been using is the right form for us to determine our nominee. That's why we are going through that, because we believe in it. If you look at the earliest discussions in the founding of our country, it was everything that we were to do was to be started in a representative form of government. So when you think about the caucus, you first decide who from your family is going to go to the neighborhood caucus. They go and represent your family. Then we elect delegates to represent our precinct to go to the convention and talk to the candidates and to vet them and then to go to convention and vote for them. So yes, we're going to a primary, and it's unfortunate. I have to tell you, it's an unfortunate thing that we have to go to a primary in this way, because I believe in the people, and I believe that the caucus system is the grassroots way for us to elect our officials. And what's interesting is the elected officials who put all of this in motion, from Count My Vote to SB 54, were all elected through this process. We cannot forget that. And so I am not in favor of where we're at today. It's done nothing but cause confusion among the citizenry, among the candidates. When you're a candidate, you're trying to figure out a strategy to get elected. It's ridiculous. All the scenarios, the lawsuits, everything, you cannot figure out the right strategy. And tell me as delegates if it's been clear for you. And I'll bet if you're like me, it's not. So I'm totally against it. I don't know where this is going to go, but it's unfortunate that we're in this situation.
Okay, John?
I can't agree more with Corey on this. In fact, back in 2013, when Count My Vote was collecting signatures so that they could collect signatures, I was there on the front lines fighting against them. I was following people around, was explaining about the caucus system and how beneficial this really is. In fact, I actually got on Fox 13 News and was actually on there. You can find it. You can search Fox 13 News with John Morris, count my vote, and I am there defending the caucus system. And here's the reason why. We talk a lot about our founding fathers and other stuff like that. I love the founding fathers, and I love how they really understood that the neighborhoods were supposed to be in charge of this. George Washington never asked to lead the Continental Congress Army. He never asked to be president. What happened is his neighbors got together and they said, okay, who do we know we can trust? Who do we know we've talked to that understands the principles of liberty? And they came knocking on his door, and he said, again, guys? Seriously? The caucus system defends that. The caucus system forces candidates to be accountable. Now the primary, we know how much they cost. They cost a lot more, a lot of money. 4 years ago, when the county commissioners were running, we were estimating some stuff, and the county commissioners were $5,000, $6,000 for the caucus, for the convention. County convention was $40,000, $50,000. And they do that because they know if they spread enough money around, then people will take notice and say, oh, I've seen that sign 100 times, I think I'll vote for him. And it's not saying, but the beauty of the caucus is that every candidate is forced to talk to the delegates. When I call up the governor, he knows I'm not voting for him, and he still talks to me. When I call up Mike Lee, his campaign staff gets back to me. When I talk to Mia Love, eventually they get back to me. We won't go door and hatch. But this is the beauty of the system. And there are people that disagree with it, and I would love to, and it's a battle we need to have and talk, but I do think that the legislature did wrong in passing the law of SB 54.
All right, John, next question is for you to begin with. The Department of Child and Family Services, the juvenile courts, and other Utah social agencies often intrude on family life and parental control, sometimes justifiably, though not always. What legislative and oversight actions, if any, need to be taken to roll back their overreach?
Boy, that is a horrible issue. I have friends who are divorced and they have abusive wives, and the courts have guaranteed that the kids have to stay with the mom. I know some people who have been abused by their parents, and the courts have left them there. I have two aunts that are nurses, and one of them, both neonatal, and one deals specifically with children whose parents are drug addicts, and it's a terrible thing. And so having that kind of system that kind of governs itself and isn't on the side of justice more than anything is a horrible thing for us. What can we do? As a legislator, one of the most important thing we need to do is I think we need to change it so that in Utah, the prevailing thought is that the mom should get the kids. That's not something that should happen. We should have it be open, and it needs to be a discovery. There needs to be a lot more investigation for the children, and actually find out what the children are going through. I was listening and reading something about rape in Utah County, because it's been a big issue. A big friend of mine has started up a new organization because she was raped at BYU, and there's a big talk about it. But there's a lot of psychological impact that they discovered, and we need to get that psychological analysis for the children so we know what the truth actually is. The biggest thing that we really need to do is make sure that we are having judges who understand children, we have proper money for the defendants and of the children, and we are doing everything so that it lines up with the best interests of the children, not necessarily the parents, because there's ego involved and other things. And if there's any type of malfeasance by the child services, those people need to have action against them. Prosecution, fines, criminal, if they're purposely doing things that is against their job and putting people into bad situations and they know they're doing it, there needs to be action against them.
Thank you. Corey?
I think there's two main things we need to remember. Three, actually. The first one is we need to have government out of our lives as much as we possibly can. The second thing is, if a crime is committed, they should be prosecuted. And so a lot of these situations, there are crimes committed and they need to be taken care of and dealt with. The third thing is we have to always do the right thing for our children. So there's no other situation where we can consider those three things. So we need to make sure government gets out of our lives. We need to make sure that criminals are prosecuted and that children are taken care of. So those are the things that I would say on that one.
Thank you. We'll begin with Corey. The next question is, a 2012 performance audit of Utah Transit Authority found that paying patrons covered only 13% of the agency's total costs. Is it right to require taxpayers to subsidize what amounts to 85% of bus fares and 95% of front-runner fares? Corey, 2.5 minutes.
Absolutely not. The taxpayers should not be carrying that burden. And that's one of the major issues we have with our mass transit system as it stands today. And there's lots of them. And the cost does not make it doesn't make economic sense. The taxpayers are paying the burden. They are asking the taxpayers to spread into other areas, even if the taxpayer won't get any benefit. Who can say where the bus routes are here in Lehigh? Anybody? They're on State Street, an express bus, and I think there's a bus that goes from the Adobe area over to the train station. They want us to pay for they want us to pay taxes to fund these projects, and we're not even getting any benefit of it. So we have to look at it. I'm not against mass transit, but we have to figure out how to make it economically sound, and we can't put a burden on the taxpayers. And honestly, I've figured it out many times myself. I cannot even ride tracks from Lehigh to South Jordan Station, which I think only takes, what, 15 minutes, 20 minutes? I don't know, because I haven't ridden it because I can't make the economics make sense to me. I can drive my car quicker and cheaper with gasoline. If I'm going to ride mass transit, I want to have some sort of benefit. I want to be able to get to where I'm going. I want it to be financially sound. And so we need to look at the right ways to implement a mass transit system and not put a burden on the taxpayers. And the last part of my story is if I were to take the train up to South Jordan, I'm only 2 miles away. My office is only 2 miles away from the train station, but it takes an hour and 2 bus transfers to get there. And so someone said the other day, the problem is the first mile and the last mile. I think it was Jake Andrew that said that. And so that's another part of our transit system as it stands today. The infrastructure to get to the main veins is not there, and so we have to continue to look at where we can make improvements there.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, it takes me a long time to get to work too. I work up by the airport, and on the current system, it would take me 2.5 hours to get to work. On the worst day when I'm going up and there's a lot of traffic, my worst day I've ever had is 1 hour and 40 minutes, and it's still cheaper than the trains. We did a big disservice because a lot of the buses that used to come through here, by the way, there's another stop right over here too that you missed. There were buses that were full. They actually estimate the ridership was around 50 to 60% before the front runner came in. And now we've dropped that down because they took the bus routes in to put in for the UTA. One of the biggest problems that we're dealing with the whole UTA is the fact, and this is coming from UDOT, I've gotten good evidence, I have a really good friend who works for UDOT. He said the biggest problem with UTA is that they are a private industry that is funded publicly with no accountability, and they hate it. When you have UDOT hating somebody for being unaccountable and spending too much money, you know you've got something going on. So UTA is doing all these things, and now Connor brought up some good numbers. Where ridership is 5% to 13%, depending on which route. There's some routes that are right downtown that they're averaging about 60% because it makes more sense and they put a lot more buses because they have more dense population. But even Chicago has requirements for riderships in order to continue routes going through, and their level that they ask is 30%. And we're getting 5 to 13% on some of these routes, where we used to have it before. So the audit department did something really great. They audited UTA. John Dougal's fantastic. He really has gone in and done some great work with it. We need to continue doing that auditing. We need to make sure that when we start putting money, that it has requirements in order for UTA to continue having that money. Because if they get the money and they just give it in bonuses, it has done no good for us. So, to answer the question in a long way around, no, I don't think that's fair. We need to completely restructure how that's taking place.
For the last of this first round of questions, we'll begin with John. And the question is, civil asset forfeiture laws allow police and prosecutors to take property from people not charged with, let alone convicted of, a crime. Law enforcement executives have consistently opposed efforts to reform the law and limit this power, which they primarily use in the so-called war on drugs. Do you think the government should have the power to legally take property from innocent individuals? John, 2.5 minutes.
My bachelor's degree is in forensic chemistry and criminology. I actually did my internship at the state crime lab that's up in West Valley. And they had cool stuff there. They had cool stuff that they would say, oh, we got this from a car that we took, that they had marijuana, so we took it. And, oh, you see that cool little gadget right there? Yeah, we took that from somebody's house that we suspected of having marijuana, and we took it. I was aghast. How can we as a people allow the government so much control that when they take our property, which is the real definition of the pursuit of happiness, well, the original language was property because we understood that property was that key component. How do we allow a government to do that and still consider ourselves to be free? The kings do that, tyrants do that, and somehow we've allowed our state to do that. Our original founding fathers said that there should be no punishment without due course, without the ability to defend yourself. And we have innocent before proven guilty. That's what we're supposed to be, right? Because the British are guilty until proven innocent, and our founding fathers said it doesn't work because they can come in and take anything. And we've allowed ourselves as a state to get trapped into that. We've got to make sure that we get as citizens, and I'm just talking as a citizen, it upsets me. As a legislator, I will fight to overturn the civil asset forfeiture. We've got to take control of ourselves again. And having civil asset forfeiture denies us of ourselves. It denies our property, which in the word of our founding father denies our pursuit of happiness. We shouldn't we need to get in, and you're going to need somebody who understands the police and can get in and talk to them about that. Because the police know that they're doing it, and they know, a lot of them in their hearts understood that that really was kind of a funny, bad thing. I'll be able to get in there, I'll be able to have those conversations. But it's something that we absolutely need to overturn and make it safe for ourselves to own our property and be safe in our own property again. Thank you.
Thank you. Corey?
We definitely cannot have this on our books. It's unconstitutional, and it takes away the rights of the people, and law enforcement has no right to steal personal property. My father was pulled over one day, and he answered a question from the law enforcement officers honestly. This was back in the time in Missouri where it was currently illegal to have a loaded firearm in your car. And the officer said, "Do you have a firearm in your car?" My father said, "Yes." "Is it loaded?" And my dad was very tempted to say no, but he was honest and he said yes. They took that firearm, they never convicted him of anything, and they never returned that firearm. He never saw it again. That is not right, and it's not constitutional, so I support getting rid of that. I will say that if someone is committing a crime and they need some of this information, these personal items for evidence, that's a different story. But even then, if they use it then and they don't find that there's been a crime committed, they need to return it, and that's not what's happening. And so that's my position.
All right, for this next round, these will be 15-second responses, rapid-fire questions.
Question.
Please.
Are we going to do like a bunch on one person and a bunch on another one?
We're going to go back and forth.
Back and forth. All
Back
right.
and forth.
Make sure we're ready.
Keep you on your toes. In fact,
Can
if
you
you
guys
want,
speak up so we can hear a little better?
Yeah. I feel like I'm yelling, so
Us
I
or
don't want
Connor?
both.
All of the above.
Connor
what
can
we'll
do
do.
no wrong.
All right, I'll face you guys for this because we're going to breeze through these questions. It might be easier to just have you both stand, and because these are going to be quick. And we're starting with Corey.
Corey.
That's right. You were last. All right, Corey. If you could be a founding father, which one would you be?
George Washington.
John.
Robert Morris.
Okay. He was the rich guy, right?
He was the one who went poor, funding all of the armies. I
All
named
right.
my son after him.
All right. And remember, these are 15 seconds, so you can take a little time.
I took it.
That was
George Washington was the best president we ever had. That's
There you go.
Robert Morris bought his son.
All right. Hey, John, when was the last time you fired a gun?
Last week, and then the week before. Yeah, so last couple weeks.
Okay, Corey.
About a month ago.
All right, Corey, if elected and re-elected in the future, how many terms do you plan to serve for?
That's a good question. I'm not, probably at least 2, maybe 3. I think a lot of it depends on the people. I'm not a term limit person. I think the people should be the ones that put the limits on the terms.
John?
2, if we can get all the regulations down, I would totally go away after 2. I mean, I might still be around.
John, when was the last time you read the United States Constitution?
This morning.
Corey?
This afternoon.
Was not expecting that. All right, Corey, when was the last time you read the Utah Constitution?
Read it all the way, it's been a while, but I read sections of it about a week ago.
John?
This morning. I had to look up a medical law related to regulation for my work, so that.
John, who is your favorite U.S. president?
My favorite, Calvin Coolidge. He's the one who really understood taxes, and he cut everything down. So by far, he's the one who really ushered in the Roaring '20s.
Corey?
George Washington. He was the first, he was the best. I don't think that we'll ever see one as good as him.
Corey, from 0 to 100, 100 being the best, how would you grade the United States Congress?
Did you say 0 to 100?
0 to 100.
I'd probably give him a 0.5.
-2.
All right. Call that good. All right, John, what's the most recent politically related book you've read?
Ted Cruz's book, actually. Time for Truth.
Corey?
The Law and the 5,000-year lead.
Corey, what's the worst part about politics?
Campaigning.
Going to debates moderated by Connor.
That's my favorite part. I don't know what you guys are talking
John,
about.
what's the worst part?
The other politicians.
John, how many laws will you attempt to repeal each year?
All of them? There's got to. We passed 400 this year. That's a good number to start with repealing. Not all of those ones, but they've piled up through the years. So we'll start with 400 as the other one there.
Corey?
How many per year?
How many will you attempt to repeal each year?
I think that a good answer would be 2 to 5.
Okay. Corey, in the last legislative session, Representative Norm Thurston from Provo was the Republican legislator who voted no the most, coming in at 13.2% of his overall votes. What percentage of votes do you anticipate voting no on if elected?
That's a good question, and I'm not sure I have an answer, but a lot.
Okay.
Depends on the bill, I think, but.
John?
All of the ones that are unconstitutional, and any one that I haven't had a chance to read because they pushed through too fast, those will automatically get no's.
John, roughly how many state laws have you read in the last year?
200?
Corey?
That's a lot. I've probably read at least 10 to 20.
Again, regulatory, sorry.
Okay.
You're talking about all the way through, right?
That's what the question says. So
A
interpret how
lot
you
that
want.
weren't all the way through.
All right, before we get to the next section of rapid questions, if you have any questions that you wanted to pass in for the final section that we'll get into in a little bit, pass them to Leah, and we'll make sure that we fold those in if possible. Again, we did have a lot of submissions beforehand, so a lot of your questions have made it in. All right, these are going to be rapid questions, but they're going to be policy questions. These are yes or no questions. You will get 2 opportunities, 2 time bonuses, if instead of saying yes or no, you want to explain yourself. So you get 2 opportunities. There's about a dozen, like 12 to 15. Okay? So you'll get 2 opportunities that rather than say yes or no, you can use one of your 2 chances to say maybe and explain
What
why.
if we say yes and explain?
That's fine. You get 2 30-second. Use it
Wait,
judiciously.
okay, now
There's only 2 time
There's
bonuses.
going to be 12 to 15 questions. These are yes or no questions. You also have the option of using 2 time bonuses that rather than answering yes or no to a question, you can say, I want to use one of my time bonuses, and you get 30 seconds to talk.
Okay, that's-
and say more than just yes or no. Leah, we got a card up here. All right, cool. Okay, yes or no. Again, keeping in mind you get 2 time bonuses
Is it
each.
my turn first? or-
Let me stay on. So we ended with Corey. So
Okay.
we began with Corey. Yes or no? Consenting legal age adults who choose to live in polygamous marital relationships should not be subject to criminal penalties for their living arrangement.
yes.
John?
Yes.
Okay. John, Utahns should not need a permit in order to openly or conceal carry a firearm.
Yes.
Corey?
Say the question again.
Utahns should not need a permit in order to openly or conceal carry a firearm.
Yes.
Corey, Common Core should be repealed.
Yes.
John?
Yes.
John, the government should provide all-day kindergarten, yes or no?
No.
Corey?
No.
Corey, parents should have access to vouchers or education savings accounts to educate their child outside of public schools using public money.
Yes.
John?
Yes.
John, a person should only be convicted of a crime if there is a victim.
Maybe.
Repeat that question.
Let me repeat that question.
A person should only be convicted of a crime if there is a victim.
No. Well, no. Let me explain a little bit more. When you're talking victim, are you talking singular or a lot of people? Okay, so no, because I'm gonna say no. All right, we'll go from there, because that was,
Okay, Corey?
The question is,
did I answer it the way I wanted it?
Okay. I'll repeat it again.
Sorry.
Yes or no, a person should only be convicted of a crime if there is a victim.
Okay, then yes. Okay, I wanted to say yes.
Okay, Corey?
the question's assuming that every crime there is a victim. If there isn't a victim, I would say yes, I think. Say the question one more time.
Who's in favor of skipping this question?
A person should only be convicted of a crime if there is a victim.
So yes.
Yeah. You're assuming that every crime has a victim. If there is a victim, yes. If there's not a victim, no.
Okay, next question. Taxes should be raised to better fund public education. Corey?
No.
John? John, the government should continue to own and operate liquor stores rather than private businesses.
No.
Corey?
No.
Corey, local governments should be denied the ability to prohibit homeowners from renting their homes on a short-term basis, such as through Airbnb or VRBO.
They should be prevented?
Local governments should be denied the ability to prohibit homeowners from doing it.
The answer is no. Or, wait, okay.
It's a double negative,
These are tough.
so yeah.
Local governments should be denied the ability to prohibit homeowners. So currently they can prohibit homeowners.
Yeah.
Should they be denied the ability to do so?
Yes, they should be denied the ability.
Okay, John? You wanna-
Yes, they should, and underneath the small caveat, we do have contracts with HOAs. As much as I hate them, I was a president of an HOA. Those contracts have to be abided by still, and the state cannot overrule those.
Okay. John, the legislature should repeal the auto dealership laws that prevent
Yes.
direct sales of vehicles. such as with Tesla. Okay, Corey?
Yes.
Corey, local food producers should be allowed to sell food directly to informed consumers without regulations from the state, including government food safety inspections, so long as the consumers are warned.
Yes.
John?
Yes.
John, the state should stop requiring vehicle safety inspections as a requirement for registration.
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Corey, local governments should be prohibited from owning enterprises that compete with the private sector, like golf courses, fitness centers, or electricity utility companies.
Yes.
John?
The convention center that killed the private industry, yes.
John, the state should reduce the number of occupations that require a state license and reduce the state requirements for entry into various occupations.
Yes.
Corey?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. The state should reduce the number of occupations that require a state license and reduce the state requirements for entry into various occupations.
Wow, there's two parts to that. That's
You
two
can answer them
questions.
differently if you want.
I'll go with yes. I'm not sure I understand it.
Okay. Corey, Utah should refuse to comply with federal education mandates, even if it means losing federal dollars for education, in order to avoid the increased regulatory burdens or strings attached to those federal dollars for Utah public schools.
Yes, I totally believe in that. We have to be courageous in doing that. We
John?
have to get the federal government out of the schools.
Yes, we need to do that. It's part of the reason why the lands fight issue is so important.
John, government employees and executives in charge of state agencies should be prohibited from lobbying legislators in an attempt to increase their power or their budgets.
Yes. In fact,
Corey?
Mark Roberts and I talked about that. He tried to pass a law related to that this last session.
Yes.
Okay, great. Have a seat. That was the end of the rapid questions.
Can we applaud that?
All right, so this final round, oh great, we got some questions. The final round will be 1 minute, let me see, where's my page? There we go. 1 minute responses each with 15-second rebuttals if you want to use any. And then we'll do this until the remainder of the time and closing statements after that. The first question is, and then, sorry, who did we end with there? Corey. So first question is for Corey. Why should delegates nominate you as opposed to your challenger? 1 minute response.
I think I'm up to the task and I'm the right person for the position. And the reason I believe that is my experience both in the party for the past 5 years as a chair here has put me in situations where I have to fight with the people I work with, meaning the Republican Party members here in this district, to fight for principles that are important. And we were able to do that very effectively a couple of years ago, and I was able to identify the principle that was being put under attack, and it was related to the delegates, by the way. And we were able to fight, we were able to organize, we were able to go into a central committee meeting where we were able to have a positive effect on a very important principle as it relates to the relevancy of the vote of the delegates. So my experience in my business and in the party that I've done for several years now qualify me for that position.
John?
I like the sound. That really gets our attention. No, that's good. It gets us. So, my experience. We talked about regulatory. It's a huge thing. It's a huge problem in Utah. I understand it. I deal with it. I read it all the time. I understand that. I've been involved with the party as well. I've been the current audit chair on leave because I'm running for office. I'm on the state central committee. I've been on the Utah County Central Committee. I've been a delegate and working with you. But I've also worked on some of the other big issues, the anti-BRT movement, that they were the big thing. Very much against that. I'm listed as the co-executive director on the petition drive. I worked very hard against the Prop 1. Some people here liked it, but I worked very hard against that because I didn't think that the money should be going into the UTA, which was a big part of that. I've also been involved in working with the legislature already. I have 3 big endorsements already Senator Mark Mattson, Senator Howard Stevenson, both of the sitting senators over this district have endorsed me. Kim Coleman has also endorsed me, who worked on the Tesla. So,
All right, next question, we'll begin with John. What would you run as your first piece of legislation? 1 minute.
well, we've got a lot of things we need to do. We got the civil asset forfeiture to close. The one that you mentioned in the last quickfire, which is the law stating that if you are working for a public agency and you're receiving money in, that's one I would be running as well. One of the big important ones, though, related to evidence and police action. We have a lot of police and we have a lot of problems that people see around. If we can get in there, and I'll be able to do that because of my experience and being able to talk to them, protect the evidence that they have. Because a lot of times you get one officer who's been a bad actor and it destroys the evidence for everyone else. If we're able to go in and say, we'll protect all the other evidence, but you guys will have better whistleblower laws to protect, so that we have that. But then also we need to have additional action against those police and against prosecutors who provide false evidence and provide false statements and put people in jail that are innocent. That's one of the first ones that I'll be working on.
Corey, 1 minute.
As our population grows, we're going to have to do a lot of things. We're going to have to make sure our citizenry is safe. And one of the first bills that I really think that I would like to start working on is one that's going to help make our paramedic firemen safer and able to help more people. Brandon, can I share that story with us? Sure. Brandon is a paramedic firefighter, and he has brought to my attention some things that they're doing up in Seattle that allow paramedic firefighters to have privacy when they wear an audio device, so that they can record what goes on when they're helping someone, and then they can go back and review that with a doctor to see if there's any way they can do a better job next time. Am I getting this right, Brandon? And the survival rate that among accidents and stuff up in Seattle has gone up 60%. Am I correct?
On cardiac arrest.
On cardiac arrest, so 60% increase in the survival rate. That's what bill I'd like to see here.
All right, Corey, beginning with you, one of the submitted questions this evening is, why should a more moderate Republican vote for you?
Let's put it this way. Conservatism is not a competition. Everyone here is a conservative. I'm a conservative, you're a conservative. We need to make sure we pull together and work together and bring our conservative values and principles into our hearts, take them up to the state legislature, and every decision that I make, and that in every decision, everything I do up there will be based on my conservative values. The time for competition among conservatives needs to end. We need to work together. We need to use our shared love of our conservative values and principles and put them to work.
John?
One great thing about me, my wife doesn't always agree, but you always know where I stand. You know exactly what I believe. And that is amazing, because then then we can have a conversation. And I'm not saying that everything I'm going to do is the perfect way, and I recognize that. But you'll be able to know where to start with me. You'll be able to come in, ask, and say, this is my idea instead. And if the idea is better, I will move towards that. It's not a competition, as Corey said, but it is based upon ideals. We do stand for something in this state. We do stand for the values of our founding fathers. Not everyone interprets that the same way. And so I will always be open. I'll be ready to take questions. I'll be able to receive information. I'll be asking questions. And I'll be able to go forward with that information and making the best decisions. If there's some interest that's for you, then I want to make sure and be able to hear that.
Next question is for John. What committees do you want to be a part of, and why?
Well, there's a couple of them. Everybody wants to be on the rules committees, because that one is the powerhouse that routes everything. I want to be on there because I understand a lot of how the things work in the legislature, and I want to be able to review those laws that are coming through and really slice those down that aren't going to be following the Constitution. The administrative oversight and rules deals with regulations. You bet I want to be on that one. I want to see where the administration is overstepping their bounds on rules and regulations. I want to see where they are trying to take advantages of us as citizens and put a stop to that right away. I really want to be on the transportation, because we in Lehigh have some of the worst problems. We've got to have somebody in there who will push those things forward. I've been asked, people have said, why don't you be on the education committee? I'd be willing to do that. Basically, I'll be willing to serve anywhere I'm asked, but I want to be places where I can do the most effect and the most good for here in Lehigh.
Thank you. Corey?
I think if every representative got their wish, the Rules Committee would be a 75-member committee. That is a very powerful Rules Committee, and our current representative, Jake Andrig, has done a great job serving on that. I really would like to be on the Transportation Committee and also the Education Committee. I think those are some of the most important committees as it relates to growth for the state. And so I want to be involved where it will make the most difference and have the best effect on making it so that we can all work together to address the issues that are going to affect us as the state grows.
Stay standing, Corey, because you get the next one.
Okay.
The next question is, of all the issues you deal with, what is the one you have the greatest personal passion about?
Right now, that would be growth, everything related to growth. So the roads, again, we talk a lot about the roads, but that's going to be a major, major issue. We've talked about the lands already. Water is going to continue to be a major issue. Our water resource is already strained. We have 3 million people living in this state, and our water resource is already strained. So one of the things that that I'm really passionate about is doing what we can to encourage our citizenry to conserve water. If we can all conserve water in the right way, we don't have to drastically change our lifestyles, but we can save right off the top 25 to 35% of the water we're currently using. That's going to be very, very important. And the one thing I want to point out is we have an opportunity at the legislature to create legislation that forces conservation. I'm not a big believer in that. I don't think we need to force things like conservation on our people.
Thank you. John?
The biggest, repeat the question again here.
Question is, of all the issues you deal with, what is the one you have the greatest personal passion about?
It's going to be the lands issue. We are only 33% free in this state because the federal government holds 66.3% of the lands here in the state. Until we can get those lands back, we're going to be always coming up against, how do we get more money? How do we find areas where we're allowed to have retention areas for more water? How are we going to pay for schools? The lands being in the control of the federal government hampers this state. It limits our freedom. It tells them that they can come in and tell us what to do because it's like, hey, you need this money, and they dangle the carrot out for us. And then they come in with a big stick if we don't do what they've asked us to do. Getting the lands back into the state of Utah changes the entire diagram and entire portfolio of what we can do, and it changes all of the conversations we have in the legislature. That is one of the biggest issues that we are going to have to deal with and have to take on.
Please stand.
Oh yeah.
All right, next question is, if you could repeal any one law, what would it be?
Just one?
Just one.
All right. Man, there's so many. Let's go, well, we've talked about it already. Let's do civil asset forfeiture. It puts too much power, it puts too much ability, it's a conflict of interest in the state. Okay, I thought of another. We got to repeal SB 54. Sorry, we got to do that one too. Okay, there's the car issues. Okay, there's regulations related to medical and nurses, what they can and can't do, that actually puts, there's too many. We've got so many regulations and other things that we are trying to deal with, that we've got to get a handle on what the government is actually doing. Regulations is one of the biggest things that we have got to take a handle on.
Thank you. Corey?
I think if I had my wish right now, I would take away all the laws that have any sort of regulation against our ownership of our firearms. I'm a strong believer in the Second Amendment, and it's past time that we get what we need. We need to be able to exercise our rights There's no other right in the Constitution that I'm aware of that regulates a right that's guaranteed to us. The other one is anti-discrimination laws, hate crime laws. They're ridiculous. If I go and punch my friend Ken Zabriskie in the face back there, and I yell something, I shouldn't be prosecuted for being a terrorist. I should be prosecuted for assaulting my friend. We already have laws in the books, and we need to get rid of these laws, or laws on top of laws on top of laws.
Thank you. Get right back up, sir. All right, next question is, should the government mandate the vaccination of all children?
My answer is no, it should not be mandated. Now, as a parent, I honestly think you're crazy not to vaccinate your kids. That's my personal opinion, but I do not think that parents should be mandated to do that. They should have that choice to be able to do it or not.
John?
No. Okay, next question.
You got a minute.
It's parents' rights. Now, do we then want to say that we should also mandate that all people should get a tattoo so we can identify them? I mean, we're going into scary territory when we start mandating who gets what and who does what. I'm just going to say no.
Okay. Next question for starting with John. What is your understanding of economic protectionism, and can you provide an example that concerns you?
Yeah, I can provide a really good example of it. We've mentioned a couple here already. Economic protectionism is where the government creates laws and regulations that provide an environment that makes it more difficult for another company to come in and enter that market. We've mentioned it already. We've talked about Tesla. Huge problem here in Utah because there is innovation coming that could save us money, be more effective for us as a people, and our government is prohibiting it. And on the other side, we actually have cars that are horrible for the environment if you take that aside and you like it. We have David Kirkham. He builds fast cars, really fast cars. And he can't sell them in this state, and they're $500,000. They're really fantastic. We've also got the massage industry. They prohibit people from doing things that they enjoy doing and loving as part of a career unless they go through their specialized programs. Fantastic thing to get rid of and reduce.
Corey?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
The question is, what is your understanding of economic protectionism, and can you provide an example that concerns you?
Okay, we've already talked about several different examples, but one in particular is when the state legislature passes $53 million to go build a deepwater port in Oakland, to take our coal resource to a port so it can be sold in Asian markets. I'm okay with all of that except for the taxpayers flipping the bill. There's a private organization in Salt Lake City called Lighthouse Resources that does the very same thing. They purchased a port in Oregon, and now they're going through 10 years of regulation to get the right permits to ship coal from Wyoming and Montana to this port to sell to Asian markets. That is something that we need to look at very, very carefully. The government should not be in the business of business. And so we need to look at wherever we can where private companies can do what they do, which is promote capitalism and the free market economy.
Okay, next question for you, Corey, is, do you intend to attend city council meetings if elected? How often?
Good question. I would definitely attend city council meetings. I have to be honest, I haven't attended a lot over the last few years, but I think it would be important for our representative here to do that because this is my district. And so I need to know exactly what's going on in our city and in our district. So that's something I would commit to.
John?
I think it's important for us to show up to city council meetings. How many people here have been to a city council meeting? All right. And that's one of the powers of the delegates as well. We are involved. I also plan on continually talking to the city council members. Paul, you should have raised your hand twice for attending the city council meeting. I plan to continue to be engaged with the cities. I also plan on being at the county meetings. I plan on being any type where we have multi-county meetings, because those are the people who really have a grip on what's really happening and where the money needs to go. We can't get the regulations pulled off if we're not talking to the cities and counties and finding out where they're having the problems. And so that's something that I'll continue to work on. We've had great legislators who've done that, and we need to continue to do that.
Next question, starting with John. The 17th Amendment changed how members of the U.S. Senate are elected, removing the voice of state legislatures in Congress. Would you support repealing the 17th Amendment?
Yes, absolutely. The power was always supposed to be with the people. The power is supposed to be a representative democracy, a representative constitutional democracy, where we elect delegates, and us as delegates, we then elect our representatives. The representatives go to the state, and the state then elects it off to the national on the Senate level. The House of Representatives is supposed to be us doing that, since it's a smaller area that we find. The power of the state has gotten lost because of the 17th Amendment. And that's, the 17th is the one that said that instead of it being elected by the state legislature, it's elected by the people at large. Because of that, and the same thing that's happened in a lot of races and other things going on, money gets brought into the system. Money starts pushing things in certain ways. Media gets picked up. If we can pull that power back to the states where it's supposed to belong, suddenly we'll have our senators speaking to us a whole lot more.
Corey?
I would support the repeal of the 17th Amendment for many of the same reasons. The one group that's not represented in Washington is our state legislature. And that's true with all the states because of this. And so we need to have that representation. We have an executive branch, we have our legislative branch, and we have our judiciary branch. And so we need to make sure that our state has a voice in Washington. And so that's what would happen if we repealed that and we went back to the way it was originally in the Constitution.
Corey, next question. Are you supporting or endorsing a particular candidate for governor? If so, why?
Right now, I'm staying neutral, and the reason I'm staying neutral is because I'm focused on my campaign. The candidates for governor are focused on their campaign. Whoever ends up being the governor is someone I'm going to have to work with very, very closely. So I know Governor Herbert very, very well. I've talked to him on many occasions. I understand where he's at. There's some things that he's done that I am not okay with. Jonathan Johnson, I've talked with him several times. He came to my office and we spent a good afternoon talking about a lot of different things. I think we align very, very well. But right now, I'm going to remain neutral because whoever becomes our governor, I'm going to have to work with him.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, as I said before, I let people know where I stand. I've been supporting Jonathan Johnson since he came to my house. I invited both Jonathan Johnson and the governor to my house, and Jonathan Johnson came. I've known Governor Herbert for a long time. As I said, I've been a delegate for a long time. And I'm also a state delegate, so I'm supposed to be finding out who I agree with and what positions I hold. Governor Herbert, in my mind, has done some good things for the state, but he's done some things that I absolutely disagree with. And I think it's time that we move on. So the things that Jonathan Johnson is talking about, the Second Amendment, the education and being able to bring in different standards and not have the Common Core, not the standards of us bringing it up, but the ties to the federal government, the ties everywhere. So yes, I am supporting Jonathan Johnson for governor.
Can I take one?
Please, 15-second response.
I would like to say that I love the fact, you heard me say earlier that I'm not a fan for term limits. I will say I love the fact that our governor is being challenged, because that to me is where the voice of the people comes in. And so if it's time for the governor to leave and the people are the ones that decide that, I'm all for that.
Okay, John, the next question is yours.
Mm-hmm.
Should Medicaid be expanded?
No, we shouldn't. We shouldn't be expanding programs where we don't have a way to guarantee that the people receiving them are absolutely the people that need to receive them. Maine did a really great thing this last year, about a year and a half ago. They basically wrote a new law that said what we need to do is guarantee that the people that want to work and need that assistance going up can work. And the people that are absolutely on disability and need it from the state because we have failed as a society to provide for them, that we will do that. And so they came in, and if you're absolutely disabled, then you got to be on the Medicare and Medicaid system. But what they did then is they created a path for people coming off. If you get a job and you're working, you get a little bit more Medicaid until you reach up a higher standard, and then they ease you off. We need to do something closer to that. But expanding it just so more people can have it is not good for us. And as Benjamin Franklin said, it is detrimental to the people receiving that aid.
Thank you. Corey?
I also do not think we need to expand Medicaid. Anything that's attached to the federal government, I'm really pretty much totally against. And we also need to realize that where we're at with our Medicaid program is the budget allocated to it is for now. What are we going to do 20 years from now when we have a bigger population and we have more people that are wanting to use it? What are we going to do then with the budget that we allocate for it? To me, the better solution is that we look for local ways to help our local people who are in need.
Corey, next question is for you. Will you always be a Republican? Is there something the Republican Party could do that would make you not be a Republican?
Anybody think Trump's going to win? That would probably be a big turnoff. I do not, at this point in time, I do not see myself changing. I've been a Republican my entire life. When I turned 18, I was so excited to go register to vote. I registered as a Republican, and the very first person I voted for was Ronald Reagan. And that was when I was so excited to go vote for Ronald Reagan. I have voted for Republican principles. I've voted for Republicans, and obviously there have been some Republicans I have not been happy with, but I believe in the platform of the Republican Party. The values and principles that I have in myself align best with the Republican Party, so I don't see myself changing anytime soon.
Thank you. John?
Let me tell you about my grandfather, who grew up in Pennsylvania. He was a Democrat his entire life, and when I asked him about politics when I was younger, he said, "I won't vote for any of those guys." He said a couple other words in there that weren't so nice for me to say here. Because they're all liars, and I can't trust any of them. When our party, our Republican Party, when we lose the ability to follow the principles of the Constitution, then I will leave this party. In Utah, our bylaws and the Constitution of the Republican Party say we follow the Constitution. We believe that the land should belong to us. We believe that the right of the people is paramount about all other things. And so I'm staying a Republican because we believe that. And I believe that all of you believe that as well. And here in Utah, because of the caucus system, because of things that are going on, we've been able to maintain that. When we lose that, we might have to look elsewhere to maintain those freedoms.
John, next question is for you. How will we know if you are elected that you are listening to us as delegates and constituents versus other politicians?
Always come up at you. I will always be listening to you. I will always be coming out and seeking those things instead of other politicians. I said at the very beginning, what is the thing I hate most about politics, and it's the other politicians. Unfortunately, through sad example, I've learned that one of the worst things you can do when you're involved with other people is listen to the people who have the alternative motive. Another way you'll be able to do it is you'll have my wife back there, and you can go talk to her, and she will say really quickly, "Oh, I'll tell him." And then you got my dad right there, who's sitting there with me as well, who came into California come from California to make sure that what I was saying is the truth. And when I said I was running for office, he said, "If you become one of those politicians, I am dragging you out." And I didn't doubt it. I was raised by that great man, and I am thankful for the things that he has taught me. And I will listen to you because I know that that is the most important thing, because this is a sacred responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Corey?
One of the things that I really loved about Jake our current representative, is you probably have all seen his videos at the end that he did every week during the session. I really like that. My commitment to you is that I'm going to do everything I can to stay in communication with you. It's very important to me to know what's on your minds and to get your advice, to get ideas. It's going to be very important. So everybody, the county delegates that are here tonight and throughout the county or throughout our district are going to be in my contact database on my phone. And I guarantee you that if one of you as a county delegate calls me, I'm going to do everything I can to answer the phone. There are people sitting in this audience that already know that I will do that. I'm going to do everything I can to keep what I'm doing up online where it's accessible to you, and I'm open to other ideas. But the point is, I'm going to commit to you to stay connected and work, but also work with my colleagues up on the Hill.
All right, Corey, now that you sat down, stand back up. One or two remaining questions, then we'll go to closing statements. As the saying goes, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Will you become corrupted?
Absolutely not. The problem with our closing statements is most of the stuff I was going to say in my closing statement I'm already saying. The values I have in my heart and in my soul will not allow me to become corrupted. I can promise that I'll be honest, I'll have integrity, and I will be listening to the principles that I believe are strong and in my heart, the conservative principles that we all share. So I will be working very, very hard. I'll be working very, very diligently. I'm going to be working with my colleagues and building relationships, but I do not plan to become corrupted. One of the things that happens when you become candidate is you start getting these questionnaires from all of these organizations, and they want to know how you think about these things, and they do it for a couple of different reasons. I think they want to hold it against you. They want to endorse people that are going to think the way they do. I do not like doing those types of things because I like to be one that answers to me and my conscience.
John?
I addressed this a little bit in my last answer, but I believe this is a sacred duty. Public servant is a sacred responsibility. If I bring about some law or I impose some restriction or I allow something to go forward that impacts you and makes your life more miserable and causes you to go in the wrong direction, I firmly believe that I will be held responsible and accountable for that in this life and the life beyond. This is something that must be taken seriously and sacred. And I will answer any question and be honest and forthright in everything I do. Josh, can I share the story of our lunch real quick?
Yes.
When Josh came to me, he came up and asked, and you can ask about this later, and he asked me all these questions, and I was answering them, and he was answering back, and I said, I've lost him. He is not going to support me at all, because he was kind of doing it. And yet I gained his support because he said, I am so surprised that you answered that way, because I've asked these questions to other people and they've switched. I remain how I am, true through everything that I do.
John, final question before closing statements. If you fail to fulfill the promises you've made in this campaign, will you opt out of seeking re-election?
Yes.
Corey?
It depends on the campaign promise. No, I'm just the standard we set is very important that we meet that standard. So we're setting a standard for ourselves by when we start making commitments to you. And so it's going to be very, very important that you hold us to the standard, not only for what we commit to as campaign promises, but what our responsibilities are as representatives. It is a very important responsibility up on the Hill. And we have a lot of people up there that are trying to influence you across the board. And so we have to be able to work with a lot of different people. We have to make sure that we don't allow our principles to be compromised. And then, yes, I think if I cannot do that job, then I don't deserve re-election. And so, but that's going to be your choice, and I'll work with you to help make that determination, I hope. But you are the ones that keep us there or not.
All right, thank you both. We'll now go to closing statements. Because of the way we started at the beginning, we'll do Corey first and then John, 2 minutes each. So we'll begin with you, Corey.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
There's one thing I want you to take away with about me. I'm a man of faith. Everyone here are people of faith. We share that. I want you to know that I believe God is the one that inspired the founding fathers to do what they did. And what did they do? They created an inspired document, the Constitution of the United States. And they created a republic out of that document. And we still have that document today, and we need to protect it with everything we can do. It is a sacred document, and this is a sacred place. We have a lot of wrinkles in this country, but I love this country. I love this state. I love this district, and I love the people of this district. And so I want you to know that I am going to be a man of faith, I'm going to be a man of integrity, and I'm going to use faith-based principles, conservative principles, for every decision I make up on the Hill and everything I need to do. So it's very important to me that you understand that that's how I'm going to be. I want to thank each of you for being here. These are long, these debates are long, and you have lots of things to do. I appreciate that you love this country like I do, you love the state, you love our election process, and it's wonderful that we are all in this together. And so I thank you for being here, and I hope I can earn your vote on Saturday, and we'll see you at the convention on Saturday.
I can't believe it's been an hour and a half already. This went really fast for me. I don't know about you guys if you're bored. De Tocqueville came to America to find out what was so special about us, to find out what we were doing different. And the one statement that he had was, I don't see the government anywhere. People govern themselves. They make their decisions, they go into contracts, they abide by those contracts, are not forced by the government to have to identify with those contracts and fulfill them. They do it on their own. Thomas Jefferson said, and to quote, "The government that governs least governs the best." When we seek to have government that oversees ourselves in every spot of that we're doing, we limit ourselves and we become more complacent in our place. We lose innovation. We lose the ability to think outside of the box and come up with new solutions. The free market system and the Constitution that guarantees those rights is put together by our founding fathers, inspired by God to do so, and brought about this great nation that we might be free, is necessary for us to defend at all costs. Ronald Reagan said, "It is up to every generation to defend the freedom. It is not necessarily inherited by the next generation." I plan to do that. You know where I stand on the issues. You know my background and know I'll be able to look in and look at government and laws and find those places where those little cracks come in and allow specialty interests to come in, and I will work to pull those things down that we might be free, that your choices might make the most difference in your lives, and not mine nor the legislatures. I want to be free. I want to serve my time and be out and know that I've done more good and become more free after the time that I was there. Thank you.
It's almost 8:30. We have the facility until 9 p.m. So the candidates will be back at their booths if you'd like to talk to them. If you'll help us be able to get out of here by about 10 till so they can close up shop. Thank you all for coming, and feel free to
Do you
mingle.
need people to help pack up chairs or
No,
anything?
I think they take care of
They
it.
take
Let's
care
do
of
another
that.
round of applause for the candidates.